All right. Okay, I think we're good. All right. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Brasil Spiritual Healing Center. We are a non-denominational spiritist center, and here we respect all religions, all spiritual traditions. Everybody's welcome to bring your thoughts, to bring your questions. Please feel free to bring whatever you want for discussion. We are all here to learn and to grow with each other. Before we start the announcements, we always begin our service with a prayer. So I would like to ask our brother Charles to come up and give the opening prayer. Please make sure you have your microphone muted if you're not speaking.
Divine Creator, we humbly thank you for everything that you have done for each of us, for our families, for our friends in our community. We are grateful for the opportunity that we have to believe in this life, to have this reincarnation as a tool for us to improve ourselves and continue our progress towards you. With that, I would like to ask for permission to initiate our services this morning and welcome everybody to this gathering, and that will be a very proactive and a learning experience for each one of us. With that, I pray. So be it.
And so it is. Thank you, dear brother. All right. So BSH is a member of the United States Spiritist Federation, and our spiritual beliefs are based around scientific, philosophical, and religious principles of Spiritism. As Emmanuel, the spirit mentor of Chico Xavier, taught us, knowledge and love are the wings for our spiritual evolution. And that's the reason why the service is divided into two parts. The first part, we always have someone speaking and sharing findings from remarkable and qualified mediums and spirits. And it's really important that you participate, you actively participate, since your mentor is already supporting you and your needs while you are hearing insights from the speaker. So please make sure we always like to recommend having a piece of paper and something for you to take notes. We know that caring and working on these reflections along the week is what will really sustain the energy that you're receiving and allow you to think about the things that you have to reflect for yourself. Then you see that the second part is a hands-on healing pass, where your mentor will be working with the BSH mediums and all the benefactors of the good or benefactors of good for you to receive the healing energy that you're looking for. And I'm going to share my screen now for you to see all the opportunities that we have for us to be together, to learn, to grow, and to share this beautiful energy. So from Monday to Sunday, every day, 6 p.m. Pacific time, we have a daily prayer. Everybody's welcome to join us. Come for 15, 20 minutes, depending on how many people we have in the room. But usually it's only a time for us to get together, for us to pray, to share, not only for ourselves, but also for the world. As we all know, the world is in very much need. So please join us. On Mondays from 6:30 to 8:30, we have an internal service only for the mediums of BSH. And the purpose of this one is for us to work on healing treatment for all of those who are in need for either physical or spiritual treatment. So if you or anyone who you know is in need, please let us know. Send us either an email at bshcenter.org at bshcenter.org. Sorry. And we will be happy to add this person's name to the treatment book. We always recommend the person to know that he or she is in treatment, so then they can also tune in with their mentor and, meditate, read the gospel, allowing the treatment to take good effect. On Tuesdays from 6:30 to 7:30 with the Divine Light group, we have a study group on the Initiation into Spiritism, a book by Teresinha de Oliveira. And we always say that even if you are an advanced student from Spiritism, it's always good for you to join. So please feel free to come. This is a moment for us to share, to reflect, to learn something new. There's always something new to learn. On Wednesdays from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., we have fraternal assistance. This one is individual and it's only by arrangement, of course. So if you want to chat, to talk, to have someone to pray with you, please be mindful that we are here for you and with you. So we will be happy to assign a medium to be talking to you. From 6:30 to 7:30, we started by the end of May, not new anymore, but we started by end of May, the study book on the book Heaven and Hell, an amazing book from Allan Kardec, very technical. So it's an amazing for us to study all together. On Thursday, from 6:30 to 7:30, we are studying the book Living Spring. And for those who have been coming here for a while, you've been listening me saying that we are at the end of the book, but we are not. So there is still a lot for us to study on this book. So everybody, again, is welcome to join. Every chapter is a specific chapter, so you won't lose anything if you decide to just join us now. Please be welcome to come. Every second Thursday of each month, we have an in-person study, prayer, and healing service. So it's in the Sacramento area. So if you are interested, please let us know and we'll be happy to share the address where we'll be meeting. And then on Sunday, we meet all at this time. And from 6:30 to 7:30, we are studying the book No Solar, an amazing book. Astral City is the same name. Again, everybody is welcome to join. So plenty of opportunities for us to be together, for us to learn, to grow, to give, and to receive. Okay, so now I would like to introduce our guest speaker, who is a very dear friend of ours, Norah Brasil. For those who still don't know Norah, Spiritism has made Norah days much more fun, interesting, and meaningful, sparking questions about life and who we are. Norah works with children as a middle school teacher. Thank you, sister, for all you do for these beautiful generations that are coming. And she also participates on Kardec Radio in a weekly shows. She is deeply grateful to be a sage and for this opportunity to continue learning together. And we are extremely grateful for you to be here with us. And today she will be sharing her findings on spirit life from the Spiritist book. So thank you, sister, for being here, and the floor is yours.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Yeah, you're so amazing, so beautiful. And I'm really, really happy to be here. And the weather here in South Texas today is gorgeous. We had our first little break from the heat. So it's just, everybody's just so, the pumpkin spice lattes and going outside for walks. So that's a beautiful spirit and energy to be sharing together wherever we are at. So I'm gonna share my screen. We're gonna do something a little bit different. I decided not to make the slides. What I did is I put all my notes, okay? So we're just gonna go by the notes. Let me see how I can remove this from here, there. I'm gonna put this here. So we are in September, and the theme for our studies is suicide prevention. So we're gonna take those questions from the Spirit's book, 223 all the way to 236, and we're gonna use them to kind of enhance our understanding and find like a connection between that and suicide prevention. So we could call it navigating spiritual growth and emotional healing, spiritism and neuroplasticity for suicide prevention. Once again, seeing how the spiritual and the science, they sort of come hand in hand, and just a little thing. This is just like a piece. There's so many books, there's so much research. So it's just a little piece for us to kind of get curious and study on our own. So the questions from 223 to 236, they're kind of talking about this errant state. So what are the spirits trying to tell us about this? So it's kind of like this transformational phase that the spirits go between the incarnations. We leave our physical body, and right before incarnating, it's that sort of state. They also call it like a discarnate state as well in the book, right? what are some key points? And again, these are like summaries based on the questions. So the characteristics, of course, is that they're temporary. Um, the duration varies from hours to centuries, depending on the progress, right, and the spiritual decisions that need to come. Aaron state also means a time of reflection and growth. So the spirit uses this time to reflect on past lives, prepares for the next lifetime. There is a little bit more of the spiritual freedom, right, than when we are here incarnated. So these Aaron spirits are detached from material life and are free to move. Again, movement always depending on level of spiritual advancement. This time is also a time of atonement and learning. So there's a lot of opportunities to learn and to grow, always thinking about progress that's coming. But Aaron stayed, while the word sounds like it's a really bad, it's not a sign of inferiority, right? It's just a level of experience. It's a natural part of our reincarnation cycle. And again, once we would reach a pure state or to be a pure spirit, then we will need to be in there. So it's not something like, oh, I'm right or wrong. It has nothing to do with it. It's just a stage. And there is also free will, even though the spirit is in that kind of middle part, right? Free will plays a huge role in how the spirit remains in there, how the spirit chooses to study, to reflect, and just get ready for the incarnation. So now that we see a little bit about the errant state that the spirits are focusing on, how can we bring that into understanding ourselves? And we know at one point we too will end up, and we have been there before. So let's find sort of like this intersection. I'm so sorry, it's a little hard to speak between it. So questions 223 and 224, they talk a little bit about the variability of time during the spiritual growth, right? So in other words, reincarnation has a time, meaning it varies. Some be faster, especially in higher worlds, right? And then now what influences, again, this is the free will, the atonement, and the spiritual growth. So this is a really important time, because it's almost like the soul is structuring their next lifetime. Now, life, death, and reincarnation are super huge parts of the larger spiritual journey, and we know that, right? So we know that with that, we're gonna have to plan those struggles because we have that spiritual advancement as our end goal to get us to our be in a better state. So what happens now when we bring in suicide? Okay, so we can see it in this way. There's a disruption of this progression that the soul has already sort of lined out for a life. So this premature return to from being alive to going back to this errant state can leave the spirit in a state of confusion, I'm right here, or regret, because the spirit didn't complete the life purpose or challenges intended for spiritual advancement. So that's one way for us to see the importance of this state. The second stage, that now we're going to questions 225 to 226, they sort of talk about the stages, right? Again, the errant state is not a sign of inferiority. All spirit levels have to await reincarnation, so there's different levels. So in this stage, we know it's temporary. Pure spirits haven't reached perfection. They don't need to reincarnate anymore. Though the spirit may experience challenges and delays, being in that errant spirit is not a sign of inferiority. So spirits of all levels experience this as part of their cycle. But what happens, right, as we're thinking about and framing this into why this stage is important, we don't want to break this, right? Because we know through this stage that we need this for development, all right? So when we end this stage prematurely, all those, again, those challenges that were necessary, they really get disrupted. And so there's nothing learned. And what ends up happening is now the soul, when they go back to this, they're going to have to restructure at this again as it is. There's already that time, right? So now the spirit would have that responsibility to add that additional time and those additional lessons that were not learned. questions 227 to 229, they get a little bit more like the spirits talked. Okay, so we have our time, you know what you have to plan, but now what is the pace, right? So it's a self-paced growth. So it is super important to be reflecting on past actions, and of course always receiving guidance in this part, right? So sort of like these questions bring to us, this is a time to shed the negative passions. That is going to be key to that spiritual progression. But again, if this state is cut off, what could end up happening? Um, Now, again, we're talking about that extra time that the spirit will need to recover from this. And the thing about this is the spirit's reincarnation will be postponed, or there might be like a different plan. You know, the spirit's books and Andre Louise, we see different scenarios, right? They have to get this clarity and readiness for the challenges of the next lifetime. But not only that, now we're thinking a spirit had an opportunity to sort of do this curriculum. It has been cut shorter. So now they have to be more atonement and more spiritual reflection, because everything that was missed, everything that was cut will kind of have to be coming back. And we're starting to see the connections, a very similar thing that the spirits are kind of preparing us for, right? Questions 231, they come in and the spirits talk about merit and happiness. So the spirit's happiness depend on passions they retain and they merit. So anything like if a spirit has a lot of negative passions, of course, those are going to be following into the errant state. So how does this impact progress? This is even before someone decides to, shorten the time. This is an inability to reincarnate when desired can delay spiritual growth. So like we already have a plan, we didn't finish it up, right? Again, in that other state, there's more work to be done, and the messengers has a lot of case studies on that. Just unresolved emotions, unresolved passions. So this is a time where if we want to be in that state of merit and happiness, well, we got to let go. So what ends up happening here is again that stagnation, right? When we don't allow the time to process those emotions, they follow over through. So the person will continue to feel, for example, despair, anger, hopelessness, right? They're going to continue to suffer from everything that was not finished in the lifetime that they were. So then again, as it is, the spirit will be feeling stuck here. That's why unfortunately they made that decision. Well, in the other state it will be even more stuck. And we know Memoirs of a Suicide is a book that talks a lot about those choices. Then questions 232 to 233 talk about, okay, well, there's movements between worlds. So here we have a time of, all right, lower spirits that aspire to go to higher worlds, right? Well, you got to work on it. And we already have, it's interesting, the purified spirits, they're going to want to return to assist others in evolution, right? So sort of like this spiritual family or universal family dynamic. And these questions to talk about, we need to persevere, right? So that perseverance through life's challenges will be the only way that spirits can go to higher realms, right? To have that movement between worlds. But those purified spirits or the mentors, right? Those are the ones that have hope and inspiration. Well, they've already been through that. Now they're coming back to us and they will be helping. So in this sense, now let's think about a little bit, and again, it's gonna be sort of similar, right? Just because someone is feeling stuck or not going, there's still hope, because we know that in this part, as there's movement, the pure spirits or higher spirits can really be part of that journey of a soul, even if they have made that decision or even before. There's a lot of spiritual rehabilitation, in other words, to help to keep moving forward. This book, Spiritual Cities, we get to see the different levels of the worlds, the different levels of evolution and all the spiritual movement that is happening behind the scenes and front sides everywhere all the time, because life does not stop. Progress and movement don't stop, in other words. And there's always opportunities for growth. And this errant state is really a space for healing and understanding, ultimately leading us spirits, writing us to really reincarnate to face new challenges. So that's the kind of like the first part where they come in, they talk about what is air and spirit, and we see in a very like direct way. It's not, we're not gonna judge anyone. We just see, well, this is what happens when we do something, then this is kind of what our soul has to deal with, in other words, right? Then the spirits transition to questions 234 to 236, and they talk about transitional worlds. Now, these places are, they're like temporary rest stops for growth, right? So these the errant spirits, which we've been there too, right? We would rest in temporary worlds to recover and prepare for future spiritual progression. So this is a beautiful place because we know life is hard, right? But just like we are understanding in that errant state, everything is a transition. Well, wait a minute. So is here. Everything and everywhere is in constant change. So we can take this message, and instead of thinking of it in a sense of, well, what would happen? How not, like if I were to commit suicide, right? We kind of already know that. Why don't we use this opportunity to find the parallels of that to me here today and see what are some tools that I can take, or some energies of hopes if I'm feeling stuck, right? I think that if anything, these were my questions. They were super amazing because they're actually very positive when we apply them to our everyday, right? Which this is what we want to do. Even though, like the sister was saying, that even the book Heaven and Hell is so technical, this one is too, but we have so many tools and the progress to be able to apply them. So one of the things that we can learn from the temporary transitional worlds, which we are in that state as well, is that there's hope because everything is temporary. So even the challenges that we face are very temporary. And important to remember that they're designed to help us grow, to evolve spiritually. So understanding that the feelings of being stuck or overwhelmed, they're not permanent. And we can get help, right? So that we don't, and so that we can prevent from seeing suicide as an escape, because it is not. And just like we saw that errant spirits in that space are taking time, well, us here too. We go through current struggles, but they're temporary and they're part of our journey. Another thing that we can learn through these questions, right, is time for healing and reflection. So, errant spirits use transitional worlds to reflect, heal, and prepare for future reincarnation. So, this rest is essential for spiritual progress. It's needed. So, it gives time for the spirit to regain strength and understanding, no matter what stage, with suicide, without, etc., everyone. So it's the same thing in life for us too. Life's challenges may be so difficult, but there are also opportunities for healing and reflection. So instead of seeking immediate escape, we want to end life, or we're thinking about it, right? Let us remember that these difficult periods are important for our growth, right? So much like spirits rest and reflect in transitional worlds. And that's a big key point for us to look at the struggles and see what are they trying to teach us, right? What am I supposed to learn from here, and taking that mindset. Another thing about these transitional worlds that relate to our state is that they are a spiritual preparation for future progress. So as in transitional worlds, the air and spirits are getting ready for the next phase, we can think about it as well as here too, right? Life's hardships are essential to prepare us. So recognizing that this challenge is a step toward a future goal or endeavor that I was looking for, right? Yeah, it's such a better way, instead of saying no, right? We gotta always keep the future in our minds, knowing that the efforts will lead to long-term spiritual advancement. And what a different mindset now when looking at my challenges, understanding the errant state and the transitional world. And one last point about transitional worlds is the importance of patience and perseverance. And this is huge because when a spirit is in the transitional world and in that state, they have to understand they're not stuck there forever, right? They're temporary stops. So no matter what, the key is patience, right? To patiently endure these phases, to prepare for the upcoming, for what is next, which is so beautiful. So if we're feeling overwhelmed, we must remember that this current moment is only temporary, that we need to have the patience, we need to have the perseverance to allow us to overcome these challenges, give ourselves a chance. I think, if anything, when we are patient, right, and we persevere, we're giving ourselves a chance to use that problem solving, that creativity, right, to be able to move on. And I think these are so important for us to keep in check because we can use them here when we're incarnated, but interestingly too, right, when we go into that state. So that is so beautiful because we just used the questions. So let's continue with the role. We can see Spiritism has a lot of roles for suicide prevention, and we're just going to show a couple, but there is so much more. It was so hard, friends. I sat here yesterday, like, what are the best top three that we can choose? But there's so much. But of course, one of the things, let's say we're feeling like overwhelmed and, oh, it's so much struggle, right? We can always open the gospel, and the gospel is full of them. But there's chapter 5, it's very, very special. I myself, thank you for allowing me to share about a little bit about myself. When I've been like this, I open up that book, and oh my gosh, it has so many messages. But we're gonna focus on the one that talks about happiness is not of this world, although they do have a part about suicide. I said, no, we're looking for hope. Like, what would be something beautiful? A lot of the times when we are overwhelmed, it's that happiness, like, gosh, I'm not feeling happy, right? And just like, we know these things, but it's always good to be reminded. We have to remember, and the Spirit's telling us, guys, earthly happiness is not what we see on social media. It's not what we see today, right? There's no such thing in here, not like the materialistic happiness that we are searching for, right? Again, we are seeing that happiness is not achievable on earth as we want to do it because it is a place for trials and atonement. We know that, right? And not only that, but the Spirit says, hey guys, riches, power, youth, they don't guarantee happiness others. So in the end, at the end of the day, the only hope that we get through this message is we believe, right? And that there is a life, that there are better worlds, that there are more advanced. So then it's like, oh, it kind of puts me in the perspective, my goals. Okay, this challenge is going to help me to stay focused so I can move on. And truly then, will I see something so different and so full of hope, right? Says here, so this, I'm going to grab two quotes. It says, so then those who preach that the earth is man's only home and that it is here during only one existence, he must reach the highest level of happiness possible to his nature that are merely deluding themselves and those who listen to them. So if there's someone claiming that there's ultimate happiness, it's not, right? Not like that. No. The idea here is when there's a challenge, I don't want to be in an unhappy state. So I use my tools, which we're going to talk about it in a little bit, to be able to be in the higher vibrational energy. But the fact is, if I don't have that understanding and something comes in, well, of course, I'm gonna drop down and be sad because I'm not in that stage. So it's so important to remember that it's okay to be unhappy, but what am I going to do to sort of combat that and move out so that I don't get into those thoughts of suicide? Okay. But what's beautiful, it says, however, do not deduce from my words that the earth is perpetually destined to remain a penitentiary. No, certainly not. From the progress that has already been achieved, we may readily infer further progression, and from the various social betterments, obtain new and further improvements. And we know this. We've seen through history, we've seen through studies, right? There's been so much progress. What's going to happen I get excited just thinking about what's to come. And we don't even have to think about it in the scale of society. We can think about it in our lives. Because how many times you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I didn't even know this was going to happen. And then it happened. So like if we're stuck, we can always keep that mindset thinking, well, the progress, like something amazing is going to come. And we keep telling ourselves that, right? Of course, we have the Gospels, right? We point to Jesus because Jesus is the master. He would be the number one person to help us if we are getting suicidal thoughts. Sometimes, too, suicidal thoughts can be like when we're battling negative emotions, the traumas, right? We're processing trauma and it's hard, or we have unresolved passions. Those are really, really hard. Now, we know any book by Joanna J. Angeles, seriously, friends, is amazing. But this particular book, there is a section that was really interesting. It's Life, Challenges, and Solutions, right? It's called Myths, Illusion, and Reality. And I believe it's in the first chapter in the introduction. And these are just some parts because it's so interesting. I won't read everything, but I do want to read the first one because it's so important to talk about this. When a child is unable to psychologically mature after the period of magical thinking development, they transfer those constructions to all stages of their physical existence, becoming a mendacious individual who takes refuge in imaginative creativity to escape responsibility for immature actions. This behavior, Joanna states, also has its deep roots in the archetype inherited from ancestral humans who underwent the thinking evolution process, leaving imprints in the collective unconscious from that period. Okay, this right here, if anything, how are the children being taught about emotions, right? That basically, if we're not giving them time to process them and showing them, being the role models and correcting it, they're gonna grow up with this, as Joanna and Givaldo say, with this idea that's not well. And when they're not well, what's gonna happen? In other words, when something happens, right? So it says here, buried but not dead, myths lie in the foundations of the unconscious, always ready to storm the mental house and psychological field, leading imaginative fertility. So life for these individuals takes on a real side, yet all their aspirations are centered on a world of enchantment, right? Certain that one day everything will change and they will live happily ever after. So what's gonna happen when this doesn't happen, right? So this is the illusion that physical life is a totality and the essential purpose of existence. They say, let me see, the belief in the illusion that everything on earth is lasting, that is not eternal, leads to a collision with the reality of the endless transformations. We see this again. We just read about this. We're seeing this again. So transitioning from illusion to reality, right, is imperative for achieving personal harmony and inner happiness. So this would be as a child, as a teenager, adult, wherever we're at, it doesn't matter anymore because we're going to see that neuroplasticity, now we know we can do this at any time. So seeking support of knowledge to discern what's not real versus real, it helps, right? Build this structure and have opportunities to have this psychological maturity and inner fulfillment. So with this determination that he's saying, like when we really want to be at that harmony and that peace, right? We're able to let go, right, of these disturbing attachments, unjustified jealousy, the senseless anxieties, childish disappointments, and all these things. So although these may provide motivation for living, they do not constitute the sole purpose, right? So people, again, the pleasures that people think that's living, yeah, but it's temporary. So accepting individuals as they are, discarding the notion that they are perfect gods, demigods, and the illusionary pantheon, I think that's how you say it, serves as a gauge for emotional balance concerning the reality of human life, neither passion nor neglect in life, but awareness of how to live well in the limited time on earth. And my gosh, when this is just that one little piece, friends, parts of that chapter, but it really it changes our perspective, because then it comes to like, why am I battling emotions and trauma? What happened? Right? And so, okay, so maybe as a child I didn't have that support, but I can change this now, right? And that mentality comes in, and we notice how we need to have that awareness. Just to add this, when we're feeling stuck and desiring escape, right? The last book I wanted to recommend, but there's so many, friends, is The Messengers. Because here in The Messengers, we do see spirits who not necessarily, how can we say, like, yes, it was a suicide, but a suicide like in like it was unconscious, because they did not fulfill their things. They didn't take care of themselves. They didn't do what they needed to do. So this 1 week that Andre Luis goes with the mentors, he actually gets to talk to these spirits in the errant state that we were reading about. And a lot of them, they were like, they didn't move on in life. Because sometimes suicide is not just like the actual thing, but we can think about it, we're not even doing anything. We become so stagnant that the question is like, am I living? Am I moving forward? Right? So it's a really hard topic, but there is hope, because it's so beautiful. When we read this book, every person that was there, that was doing their life review, that went through all of that, they had so much support. They had so much love. They had so much prayer. And it was amazing how God's love in all states and every way is, right? So, but we then start to understand that, I mean, if we don't complete something here and I stop living, metaphorically, right? I mean, I'm gonna have to face that. And this book will transform our way of seeing these things, and maybe it will push us, right? It'll put something on us to like, okay, let me move a little bit more. Let me ask the mentors. Let me ask the universe, what do I need to do to keep moving? But friends, there is this letter here by Emmanuel in the beginning of this book that is absolutely like, wow, it just makes the book amazing. The book is beautiful. It ends with a prayer, which I'm going to show you guys at the end, and it begins with this letter by Emmanuel. I'm going to read parts of it because I really think it helps us to get more hope. It says, Emmanuel says, one must realize, however, that the brain is the apparatus of reasoning, and that by the way of the simple event of physical death, discarnate humans do not suddenly enter the realms of the angels. On the contrary, they continue to face their own conscious, struggling to enlighten their minds, and in a different vibratory sphere, they prepare to continue their journey. He goes on. Ordinary men and women are used to eagerly hoping for something extraordinary to happen, but they forget that nature is not concerned with satisfying their individual particular point of view. Oof, wow. And here it is, my friend Emmanuel. This is so beautiful. If you are seeking the spiritual light, if animal-like existence has worried your heart, remember that in spiritualism, investigation always leads to the infinite in the realm of the infinitesimal as well as in the sphere of the distant stars. And only the transformation of yourself in the light of higher spirituality will enable you to draw from the founts of the divine life. And above all, remember that these uplifting messages from the beyond are not meant to be a mere expression of emotion. Above all, they are intended for your understanding as a child of God, so that you will take inventory of your own accomplishments and truly hand yourself over to the responsibility of living in the presence of the Lord. So this is beautiful, and it's a beautiful book. So now that we've covered that, there is neuroscience, and I'm not an expert in this, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But I was watching this YouTube channel, just looking for hope for myself. Okay, I need to. I mean, we all need, right? At one point, when things happen, and I came across Dr. Andrew Huberman, and I was like, wow, this guy, as a neuroplastic doctor, and just someone who went through struggles, right? He had a hard time finding himself. He finally did and fixed it up, and he actually became a neuroscientist. And he talks a lot about how neuroplasticity enables the brain to adapt, to learn, and recover from trauma and or injury, right? So again, we know that part of suicide is like the brain, right? And all the mental stuff like chronic stress, depression, trauma, right? These, and this is all according to Dr. Huberman, okay? They create negative thinking and patterns. So then they start to reinforce the feelings of hopelessness. And this unfortunately can lead to suicidal ideation, right? But neuroplasticity can allow for that retraining of the brain through positive experiences, new perspectives, and emotional management tools, which he talks a lot about in many of his videos. Of course, he talks about you need to have like therapy, right? Because through cognitive behavior therapy, for example, you get tools to learn about being more mindful and start to shift away from destructive thinking, right? He says, when people feel stuck, they feel like they're in this cycle of despair. And again, with neuroplasticity, they can help create new emotional pathways. This is science, friends. Another thing is like, all right, so let's focus a shift from the negative to creating this positive behavior practices, right? So when something good happens, like, yay, we repeat it and repeat it, right? So in that, what's happened is all the neurons are rewiring. And he says we gotta engage, like in exercise, social connecting, goal setting, learning, all those things that are our day-to-day things. Those are the things that we need to be focusing on. So there's repetition, right? This consistency will strengthen those neural circuits, healing to better thoughts and reducing the suicidal addiction. That mindset is so important. Learn to focus on positive outcomes like gratitude, hope, problem solving, right? Neuroplasticity will prioritize these positive behaviors that help with stress management and emotional regulation. Like he talks about breathing, like physical exercise, right? Being in sync, kind of like that heart mind coherence in a way. He brings in this idea of us having these practical tools for harnessing neuroplasticity. So we're in this place that we just don't want to live, or we're thinking about it. My gosh, like all it takes is practice, perseverance, right? And we can change this. That's basically what he's saying. Being self-aware, going out there. Um, let's keep doing the work, go to therapy, set those goals, do the exercise, right? Because we can see here with neuroplasticity and everything that, and there's so many more, by the way, friends. Um, but he has a YouTube channel. That's why I kind of want to bring him in, and you see a lot of interviews. And in a lot of them, he kind of ends this way by saying that neuroplasticity, it provides a powerful mechanism for suicide prevention or other mental illnesses or ailments, right? By reshaping thought patterns and managing stress and just creating new emotional pathways that really rewire the brain and foster resilience, right? And I thought, my gosh, like here we are reading the spirits book. Look at the different books that the presentation brought, right? The study, and now we have neuroscience, and we start to see that they all are interconnected, and there's a lot of support for us along the way. So it's important for us to take personal action in challenging times. That's what we see, right? So finding those tools, right? Achieving the optimal state that we can do it. These are some, there's so many. Doing the reflection and gratitude journals, writing, the meditation on detachment from material life, finding guided self-examination for releasing negative passions. Like we gotta go in that, get rid of them. Doing visualizations of spiritual progression. My gosh, I mean, are we taking that time? Doing acts of service and compassion. Affirmation of perseverance and spiritual fulfillment, nature walks, connection to this universal spirit. And what will you choose? Because there's so many. In the world today, we have access to so much. I mean, it is absolutely incredible. Like there's no way we can stay stuck if we, having that support, doing this, doing the research. I mean, of course, if a person needs medication because they're depressed or anxious or having these things, it's so important, right, to have the science and the spiritual as well, but also doing these exercises, the therapies, and sort of like there's no one way, in other words. So in conclusion, friends, feelings of stagnation, these feelings are temporary, but they are essential for our spiritual growth. Let us remember that we have spiritual support. There is always guidance and help from higher spirits. We need courage in the face of struggles, right? Because life's difficulties are part of a spiritual plan. We need to persevere because by enduring, we can heal, we can grow, we can prepare. And of course, there is a website. Let me see if it works here. It is so important, friends. If anything, we literally call 911, but there's also crisis lines as well that we can talk if we're in this stage or if we know of someone, right? There's a lot of resources. And it's so interesting in this side because there's research for veterans, right? Because for those that have been sexually assaulted, for abuse, for people that are depressed, have addictions, who are anxiety disorder, autism, bipolar. So look at this. There's so many spiritual things that souls are working, right? For and all these things are so important as we saw. But it's important to get the help, spiritual help, the medical, biological help, but also look at resources online and not stay quiet. Okay. We're going to end this with a prayer. Friends, I'm sorry, I know it's 12:49, but this is a beautiful prayer from the messengers. And this prayer can be like, I was thinking, yes, because if somebody is suicidal, and if you maybe been there, sometimes the prayer might not be the first thing, but a friend might call us, right? We might be that lifeline that the spirits might be using us, especially as spiritists. Some friends start to know us. Well, we can also be part of that support, and a prayer is so important. And I wanted to bring Ancieto's prayers and from the messengers because after all, in this book, that's where Ancieto and Andre, they were all there with those souls that were already on that errant state, thinking about what they did, could have, should have, etc. Right? And look at this. It says, Lord, teach us to receive the blessings of service. We still do not know, beloved Jesus, how to understand the extent of the work you have entrusted to us. Let us, Lord, be able to form the conviction in our soul that the work of the world belongs to you, so that vanity will not insinuate itself into our hearts through the appearance of good. Give us, Master, the spirit of consecration to our duties and unconcern for the results which belong to your love. Teach us to act without the fetters of the passions, so that we may recognize your holy purposes. Beloved Lord, help us to be your loyal servants. Beloved Master, grant us your instruction. Righteous Judge, lead us on straight paths. Sublime Physician, restore our health. Compassionate Pastor, lead us to the fount of water. Wise Engineer, give us your blueprint. Magnanimous Administrator, inspire us in our tasks. Sower of good, teach us to cultivate the fields of our souls. Divine Carpenter, help us to build our eternal home. Careful Potter, patch the vessel of our heart. Watchful Friend, be also tolerant of our weaknesses. Prince of Peace, have compassion on our fragile spirits. Open our eyes and show us the way to your kingdom. A beautiful prayer for the world. Dear friends, thank you so much. That was the message. Thank you.
Oh, my sister, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing so much information. This was really, really interesting. There was so much content, but there is one piece that, if possible, could you come back there and just explore a little bit more when you're talking about neuroplasticity, breaking the cycle of despair? I think it's a little, yeah, that. Um, can you just speak a little bit more about this piece Again, sorry, sister, to ask you about that. If that's okay.
I was
You
muted.
are, there you go. Thank you,
Yeah,
sister.
this is one of the points that Dr. Huberman makes, right? Um, a lot of the patients or a lot of the people, they feel like they're in this cycle like nothing. So they get these suicidal thoughts from feeling stuck in emotional pain. In other words, so how can neuroplasticity do that? So you have to adapt the new mental habits. So in other words, these are kind of like the things that if you allow me to come down here, it was kind of like this list of things, right? Finding the tools for someone to take. So this part of breaking the cycle is someone taking a personal action. And there's so many things. A lot of the times it's really a person might be so lost that they cannot do it on their own. Been there, right? So you find someone who is able to say, okay, let's do one task. It's almost like let's do a checklist for you to break that emotional cycle. So if you, my emotion is nothing works for me, right? How are you going to rewire that thought? Nothing. Or I have bad luck. I used to say that all the time. My gosh, it took a long time to rewire that. Well, then our focus would change from, well, what did you have anything good that happened? And can we change that to like good luck if we want to see it that way? Or nobody loves me, right? How could we rechange that emotion? Well, what do you mean by nobody? Are you sure? Are you being something like, is it because maybe the person that you want to receive love doesn't love you, that you're thinking nobody does, but you're ignoring the hundreds of people that do, right? So helping rewire that emotional place, like that. And I've had to do that a lot myself. That's why I'm speaking from personal experience. I myself did it more thinking. I love to think, but there are people that love to write their emotions. I tried to write and it didn't work for me. It was too much. I felt like for me it was about thinking, going on a walk, listening to a song, but most importantly being aware. And there's a lot of emotions like the not being loved, like nothing works for me, or even things like I'm ugly. Well, is it because there's one aspect of yourself that you don't love? And there are people that think they're so bad that they're not wanted, they're so ugly that it will lead them to staying stuck. So then affirmations. Louise Hay has a beautiful book full of affirmations. She actually has, even when we're recorded, it's just full of affirmation. When the brain starts doing that, it changes things. There's also Dr. Joe Dispenza, who not only has the meditations, but he talks a lot. He's also one that says neuroplasticity. You have to keep repeating it, repeating it, repeating it. The brain will actually not tell the difference, and this is his research. Um, Dr. Joe Dispenza's research, the brain won't really tell the difference. Like you can, if you tell it you're beautiful, or if you're walking, or different things. He has a lot of examples where he says if you tell it you're this, you're that, it will start to believe. Obviously, it depends the circumstance, but I hope that little bit helps to understand from that emotional stem how to change those thoughts using the brain and what we know about it to our advantage. I hope that answered a little bit of the question.
That did. Thank you so much, sister. This was really powerful, really powerful.
It
Uh,
is. It's funny because now that I had to go through all of this to speak about it from firsthand experience, but it works. Like you just have to be very consistent. But
yeah.
the first step really is to find someone that's a little bit better, because you're not there yet, and it just takes one thing that works, and you're consistent, and a lot of patience, a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. I'm still working on it. So, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much, sister. It's an exercise. It's a daily exercise. Thank you so much.
It is, and we can see this even in Aaron State when we
Mm,
were the summary of those. We have to.
yeah.
We're always working. We're
Yeah.
always bettering ourselves. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so many notes. Thank you so much. I won't keep you here. If anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free.
Well, I do. The first one, I have two two things. The first one is minor and pretend as if we were completely done with this and we're just talking in the living room. It's kind of like a pet peeve with the neuroplasticity, because when you hear that, the key word in that is plastic. I don't like that term. It's almost like they rushed and gave it a term, gave it a name, and didn't ever correct it. To me, it seemed like it should be neuroflexibility because the mind is flexible. So I know what they mean. So I'm saying it's a pet peeve of mine. It's no big deal, but I had to get it out so I can get to the main point. I really enjoyed your presentation. It's a very powerful thing that stuck with me was that archetype where a person could get stuck at a young, immature place, and that affects other parts of that person's being. And then later you spoke about how important it is to mature. And it's that mature, it seemed to me, it's that mature person is the one that's more likely to reach out for help. Now let me get to my question. If you get someone who is stuck in an immature level and is not reaching out, maybe they are and I'm not seeing it, but and they're not necessarily reaching out for help, how does one, and let's say this person is grown, meaning of mature age, and we know that you can't force an adult to do anything, how can you help that kind of person who might be stuck, as I'm seeing it now in the archetype, and who is mature of age, and how do you help that person? I think you understand what I'm saying.
It is a tough question because, like you said, like adults, for the most part, it's really tough. I mean, the free will. But I've had a handful myself, but also, I mean, I had friends who are eternally stuck on that. It's my parents' fault or my childhood, and they just don't move on. And you have to be sort of like that role model. I think that's the thing because we cannot change anyone. And I don't have another answer, but when we are in discussions with the friends or the group, right, we can start to elevate the energy. I mean, it has to be a very intentional conversation and start kind of just changing that, like maybe introducing it. I'll say it like this in an example. It was a couple of years back. We were having tacos at Taquiza, right? We were sitting out there. It was a beautiful evening. I thought, my gosh, we could have amazing conversations. And it actually ended up in the direction of your question, Ken, where everybody was sort of like, who suffered the most? Who is the worst, right? And honestly, at the end of that conversation, I realized there's nothing that could change them, but I introduce them. And like I say, you plant the seed. You can't do much about it, but listening, now let's take this to a more deeper, because it's about suicide. We have to be very aware, like listening to our friends, because sometimes they might not tell us, like you said, but we might be saying something that maybe they don't want to tell us that they are listening to, but they are. I don't know if this makes sense. This might be the teacher in me, because a lot of the times I do have children, they say, nobody loves me, and then you give them a whole speech, right? And you never think, ever, that they actually listen to you. You think, oh my God, this. And then they come up like a random time in the future. They'll come and look for you, which has happened. That one time that you told me, like, it really changed me. I was like, oh, wow. And I really do think if we're that role model in our friendships, right? Even if we can't, we just spread seeds. We just be that role model and always try our best. That's the best way I can answer that question, Ken, based on my experience. Maybe someone else has a better answer, or someone who's worked more with like counseling, like Miss Gina. I know you've counseled a lot of people here. Like, how did you do it? You know what I'm saying? Like, you've actually worked with people.
But you've already said it. The key is listening. That's
Okay.
number one, is listening. And again, and then being that role model for that person.
Yeah.
You said everything right, basically. Unless they're asking for help, there's not much you can do. Well, you don't want to intrude anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, actually, I found your answer quite helpful, believe it or not, because it's reinforced by what Gina is saying. But when you said you just gotta role model. You got to keep trying, keep looking for things. And you never know which thing or what thing. And sometimes you're unaware, as you just also mentioned. Somebody comes to you in the future and say, thank you so much for that. So, so that to me was hopeful and helpful. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Yeah.
And Ken, the other thing too that just came into my mind is sometimes those who are suffering, they see others as Nora was saying, that like everything is fine with their life and they won't understand me. So then they shut themselves. But one thing that might help them is to see like some level of vulnerability. All of us are vulnerable to some level of emotion or to some need. And if we just show a little bit our vulnerability, then they feel safe to be vulnerable as well. And maybe that can help them to just open up a little bit because they know that like it's normal, it's part of life. We are all on the same boat. Some deal better or worse, but we are all vulnerable to something in life. So maybe that can also add.
You know, one of the universal human needs are to feel heard and understood. And that's, of course, particularly important when we are negative or in crisis. So what Gina said is just listening, giving somebody empathy. Doesn't mean we agree to their state, but to really stay with the feelings and just letting them process so that they walk away feeling heard and understood. That is most of the battle, and I have it from my own experience being in moments like that. It tends to be a little bit, that's my experience, a movement of, oh, you're negative and, don't be so negative. And to me, that is very hurtful when you are negative because obviously you are not enjoying that state. But if the other just listens, right, and says, I feel what you're feeling, and then once that's all complete, it's like, would you like to hear a different perspective, perhaps, right? Asking for permission to bring a different perspective. And the person may say, no, I'm not ready for it, or say, yeah, please, right? And that's when the turnaround starts. So anyway, thank you. Thank you so much, Nora. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Hey, Norah, thank you again. It's always a pleasure listening to your presentation. It's very thorough, very in-depth type of observation. But one thing that I want to say is that I really love your slides. That caught my attention. They were beautiful. Thank you so much. But again, in response to what Cam was brought up, I think it's important for us to be attentive that if you are not the one in a position of desperation, seeking advice or guide, but you are the other side, that you are in a position of being of help, it's important for us to really focus on our intuition because that person was brought to us not by coincidence. So you have what it takes in order to answer that question. Your sensitivity will be the ones that will determine each way that person will go. I would say just like if you have an airplane flying in a direction, just a little blow of wind on the tail of that plane will change its direction. So be sensitive to that. I think that's what it is. Thank you. Very nice, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your participations, your questions, your comments. If anyone would like to keep the conversation, I invite you to reach out to Norah. And Norah, again, it was beautiful. Thank you so much, sister. God bless you so much. All right, so we're going to take 2 minutes break and we will come back for the passes. Everybody's welcome to, of course, to stay and bring your glass of water. Thank you.